Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I know that we started communication extension delivery methods and adult education already, and we've gone through the majority of the slides, but I want to just highlight a few things in these slides that we didn't go through and to explain them. So let's go through it. And if you have any questions, you can Skype me or send me a WhatsApp or anything like that. Okay, when you have a sender and a receiver, the sender would communicate a message through a channel, and then the receiver receive this message, have specific perceptions and interpretation and decoding of the message, and will take a decision based on how he perceived and understood the message. I will talk next about the adoption diffusion process, and let's see how it happens. Okay. Regarding the adoption diffusion process, it's about how a farmer would hear, for example, about a new technology and how he will go from the awareness to the adoption stage. Let me give a simpler example. If, for example, you go to buy a bag or to buy new shoes or something, you hear an advertisement or somebody will tell you about it, and then you're aware of it. After this, you might develop interest and say, okay, I want to, that might be something of interest. I want this kind of bag or this kind of shoes or something. And then you say, okay, what are the disadvantages and disadvantages? Would I like pay a high price for a little benefit? So I try to evaluate the things and the price and the things. And then, okay, but I need to try it. So if I need to buy shoes, I would try it before. If I need to try to buy a bag, maybe I will hold it or try it or see it, touch it or something like that. This is all trial. And then if I liked it, I will buy it. And then if I like the shoes, I will buy them. That's from a marketing perspective. But let's talk now from a farmer's perspective. So whenever there is a new technology or new idea, so the farmer will learn about it through other farmers or through advertisements or through like a company or through whatever, through extension offices or whatever. So he's aware. The first stage of the adoption diffusion process is awareness. And then after awareness, we can talk about having interest. So I'm aware that there is a new technique to get rid of mastitis or something. So then farmers develop an interest and seek more information, which means like, okay, I have this disease in my farm or and then I need to do something about that. So I'm interested in it and I want to learn more about this technology. And then I try to evaluate. So I have to pay this amount for this technology and I will benefit this much. So would it be good? And I ask other people if they used it and was it beneficial for them and what are the advantages and disadvantages of this technique. So I try to make some evaluations before trying it. And then I say, okay, I will try it. And then, but after I try it, either I adopt it and I say, okay, this is fine, this is a good thing. If there is, either I accept or I just reject it and I don't adopt it. So that's the process of adoption diffusion. When we talk about adoption diffusion, there are different adopter categories that we talk about in the next slides. Okay, let's talk about the adopters categories. So, if we divide like the population of the farmers to 100%, and we see that we have 2.5% of the population could be like risk takers and eager to try new ideas. So whenever there is a new agricultural invention, those people who are like innovators would like to try these new things, and these would constitute 2.5% of the people. And then there is the early adopters, who are 13.5%, and these could be like opinion leaders or followers and have a certain degree of respect in the community. So these could be like the early adopters. And then you have an early majority and a late majority. So the early majority adopt before an average adopter, and they have intense thought and deliberation. Whereas the late majority, they adopt the new technology shortly after an average adopter. They could be skeptical and consider economic and social aspects. And there are the laggards, who are very traditional and suspicious to try new ideas. So these are the people who adopt the last. Okay. So, as we talked before, whenever you have to deliver a message, you need to use the receiver's language and avoid jargon and using complex symbols. And you should use a technology that could be acceptable in the community and that has a relative advantage of what it replaces. And it should be that your message should be not complex and should promote for trying this technology and for the usage. We already discussed the extension delivery methods, and we discussed their classification by nature of contact or form of communication or function or technique used. So we already discussed this. So when we talk about adult learners, we talk about people who have diverse kind of knowledge and diverse experience and life skills. They are directed learners, goal-oriented, and need to be shown respect. So adult learners have specific goals like to improve some skills or earn some knowledge related to their work, and they have a background knowledge that we should appreciate. We already discussed the different types of learners, and we mentioned you have the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And we discussed different ways that these people can learn. So visual would rely mostly on images, videos, chart, maps, and the auditory would rely on discussions and listening and so on. And the kinesthetic would like to make movement, role play, and emotional sensation. There is a different the Kolb learning styles is another classification other than the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, which is based on another framework. Here, it is based on the different experiences and ways that the person learns. So you have the people who learn through concrete experience, other who learn through reflective observation or abstract conceptualization or active experimentation. You don't have to worry about this a lot, but this is just an example of different classification of learning styles. So this is a learner-centered model where you can see that learners interact with teachers, subject matter, instructional material, and physical facility. And if any of these things is not appropriate, that will affect learning. It's very important to talk about the learning domains because these are the domains that we're going to affect and we're going to commit changes when we are doing programs for farmers. For example, when we go to the cognitive domain, it is mind-based, so we are changing knowledge basically. And then you learn about the fact, you understand it well, and then you apply. So that's the cognitive domain, and usually in the university we really focus mostly on the cognitive domain and sometimes on psychomotor domain. So for the psychomotor domain, it's skill based. So we're changing a skill. So let's say we're learning how to drive, and then you first imitate your instructor, and then you start practicing like driving, and then it will become a habit. So when we want someone to learn a skill, then he's going to use this psychomotor domain. When we want him to change knowledge, we will go and affect the cognitive domain. And then if you want to change a behavior, then we need to go to the awareness, distinction, and integration thing. So I become aware about a new technology or a new solution. I distinguish, I see, I evaluate, and then, okay, I learned it. It's integrated within my practices. So usually you change knowledge, then skills, then behavior. It depends on the program. I will give more examples on the cognitive domain, but usually when you do extension, you could address these three domains easily. So talking about the levels of cognitive learning in Bloom's taxonomy, it's like knowledge and then comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. I'm not sure if I already distributed like the sheets that have verbs for each and every phase in the cognitive domain and the psychomotor domain and affective domain. So there are different verbs that you can use depending on what you want to affect. If you want to affect knowledge, at what level, or behavior at what level, or anyway, or skill at what level. So you will see this in the sheets. You don't have to worry a lot about it, but just to let you know that it's there. Okay. Now we will start talking about learning how to write learning objectives. So when we want to write a learning objectives, there are different steps that we should take. So your objectives has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Even when we talk about project development and objectives development for a project, we use the same like SMART objectives. But anyway, a learning objective is different than a program objective. So a learning objective, let's say we want you to learn now how to develop a program. So I will give a session about program development, and I expect you to understand, or I expect you to explain the different phases of program development by the end of the session. And then this would be very specific because I'm teaching you what are the objectives for example, developing a program. And then you will learn it through the session. And then I measure it through discussion. I discuss with you and see if you have the knowledge. And then we can see it's achievable because I will do it after the session. Is it relevant? Yes, it's relevant for the course, because through this extension course, you will learn how to develop a program, which will be your final project. And it should be timely, yes, because we said this is directly after the project. Anyway, you have the objective sheet, and through the objective sheets, there are verbs that you can see and then use for your as educational objectives. Whenever you want to develop a session, a learning session for your students or for farmers or whatever kind of session, think about, after the end of the session, what do you want the participants to be able to do? Do you want them to be able to identify concepts? Do you want them to be able to practice a certain skill? What do you want them to be able to do? So whenever you think about this, you put this is your objectives, and you start your objective. By the end of this activities, participants will able to be or will able to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you state what are your learning objectives. And then after you put your objectives, you can start putting your activities and think, okay, what kind of activity I can do so my students or my farmers or whatever the session attendees would be able to have the skills. Let's say I want them to learn about t-test and I'm in a class. And then I need to explain the t-test. I need to use like instructional materials. I need to use like software like SPSS or whatever. I want them to learn about tomato diseases, and then I need pictures. I need like visuals. I need maybe some plants with me. I need to do like a kind of identification exercise or something. So I start thinking about the activities and the tools I need to be able to achieve that objectives. And once you stated your objective and you identify what teaching methods you will use, like and then what tools you would need, then you will be able to formulate your session. If we think about effective teaching, there are three main things that affect teaching: the knowledge of the instructor, the ability to plan instruction, and the learner-instructor interaction. So the instructor should be subject matter competent, and he should be able to deliver and evaluate instruction and understand the different types of teaching methods and different types of learners and adapt the materials for them as well. If we talk about the ability to plan instruction, and then the instructor should have this ability to plan the instruction by recognizing the needs and the characteristics of learner and design a proper content and delivery method and evaluation, and to develop measurable objectives. When we talked about the interaction, so it's a both way, it's a mutual way thing. It's not just the instructor should be, it's the instructional personality or the instructor ability, or it's a both way interaction. So there should be enthusiasm from both, from the instructor and from the students, and the instruction should be clear, and we should be honest, like the instructor should be honest and the participant should be honest, and there should be mutual constructive feedback among each other. And again, when we talk about effective teaching, we should be first thinking about the outcome, what the student or the participant will be able to do. The instruction should be clear. There should be like logical sequence, illustration, demonstration, example, whatever teaching methods and material and tools that you'll be using. And there should be a dynamic learning educational environment. We talked already about different teaching techniques and materials like lecture, role play, flip chart, panel discussion, videos, games, case studies, brainstorming, question cards, active summaries, demonstrations, hands-on. And within your assignment, you can use a mix of all these and mix some techniques together and do whatever you want. Sometimes we mix things together and we don't use one simple technique. You can use a mix as well. If we want to talk about the learning management cycle, there are different steps. We start by analyzing, understanding the needs and different things, and then designing the session or designing the training, whatever, and then developing the materials, and then implementing, and then evaluating. So understanding the audience is key, and then we should know about their level of literacy, prior knowledge, the resources they have, the different experiences, the cultural background, and their preferred learning methods. And once we know about this, we go to the next steps and we see how we're going to develop an appropriate learning experience for these people. So when we talk about defining learning objectives and training content, first you decide on your objectives, and it's the purpose of the activity. What do I want these people to do after this training? And this is how you start your learning objectives, as we said before. And then your training content, and then you go and check the methodology, the appropriate level of challenge, what could be appropriate for those people regarding their level of literacy and their level of knowledge, and so on. So after you decide on an objective, you choose the methodology. Do I want to use a role play? Do I want to use a video? Do I want to use what specifically do I want to use? What kind of methodology? And then if I said a lecture or a group work, okay, what tools do I need? Do I need cards? Do I need flip charts? Do I need like visuals? Do I need whatever do you need? You will specify it. And then you update, you provide up-to-date content. And then you need to have clear objectives and check the training design with beneficiary. Usually when you're doing a training, and it's not for this course, definitely we're not doing this, but just an idea to have it, and adapt the activities to need. And if there are people with special needs, then you should adapt the training according to them as well. Whenever you develop training materials, you should get feedback from your colleagues. And if there are blended materials, they should be piloted, and you should do activities that match your objectives and they satisfy the needs of your audience. Here you implement your training, and then you just see what gaps in knowledge they have, and then you try to fill them, and then you conduct your session or your group work or whatever you do. You just try to meet their expectation and give them the information and skills needed within this phase. And then after a learning objective, when you want to see if this learning was effective or not, there you should do like kind of assessment and see that these people learn or not. Like the games I used to do, for example, in class with you, or for example, exams are kind of assessment, or just a simple discussion, or doing a concept map, or a paper, or something. These are pre or post tests. These are all kind of evaluation of things. So now let's go to the next slide and revise the delivery mechanism. So now let's discuss the delivery mechanism, and then here let's talk about the different learners and their needs. So we need to look at their history, prior knowledge and experiences, learning style and family responsibility, and all these things. So when we understand the background of our learners, then we'll be able to design specific kind of training for them. And then we need to examine and organize the content. So the content needs to have some appropriate level of challenge for these people. So it shouldn't be too easy or too difficult, so they keep engaged. And then we need to determine what to include in the content, and this is after having clear learning objectives, and the activities need to be organized in a certain sequence. And then after selecting the objectives and the methods, we select the tools and the strategies that should be using according to different learning styles, and we shouldn't forget the effective learning environment, whether physical, physiological, social, or cultural. And then were the objectives met? Was this teaching effective? Then we see this in different assessment or evaluation methods. So this was the end of this course. These are like two different references if you want to see anything about designing training or training session or training course or something. There are different references that you can refer to. And if you have any questions, just contact me and let me know, and definitely this will be part of your midterm exam.